She was fired in under 30 seconds, with no severance, no goodbye, and no one in that house bothering to look her in the eye. What none of them knew was that the man watching from the top of the staircase had already made his decision, and in the next few minutes, every single one of them would lose far more than she ever had. Diane Carter had worked in the Whitmore mansion for almost 2 years, arriving before sunrise and leaving long after the family had gone to bed. She ironed shirts no one thanked her for, scrubbed floors that were dirty again by morning, and memorized the small details of a household that barely noticed she existed. She wasn't just cleaning a house. She was quietly holding a family together while raising her own daughter alone, working double shifts to keep a roof over both their heads. She never complained. She never asked for more than what was owed to her. She simply showed up, every single day, and did her job with a kind of quiet dignity that most people in that house had long forgotten how to recognize. That morning started like any other. Diane arrived early, laid out breakfast, and began her rounds through the enormous house. But by mid-morning, the tension in the air had changed. Mrs. Whitmore was pacing near the staircase, her voice sharp and clipped, while her husband stood beside her with his arms folded, jaw tight. A small gold bracelet had gone missing from the bedroom the night before, and without a single question asked, without even checking the drawer where it had simply been misplaced, the blame landed squarely on Diane. She stood there in the foyer, still in her uniform, stunned into silence as Mrs. Whitmore's voice rose louder, accusing her of theft in front of the open front door where anyone passing by could hear. Diane's hands trembled as she pressed one palm to her chest, tears rising in her eyes, not out of guilt but out of disbelief that 2 years of loyalty could be erased in an instant over an assumption. She tried to speak, tried to explain that she had seen the bracelet slip behind the nightstand just days before, but no one was listening. Mr. Whitmore simply told her to pack her things and leave before security was called. There was no room for her voice in that moment. There was only judgment, delivered swiftly and without mercy. If this story is already breaking your heart, take a moment to like this video, drop a comment below, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always matters, and subscribe to Kindness Corner if you believe in second chances and the quiet strength of people the world often overlooks. Diane picked up the small bag she kept by the door, the same bag she brought every single day with a change of shoes and her daughter's photo tucked inside. Her chest ached with humiliation as she walked toward the exit, the marble floor beneath her feet suddenly feeling colder than it ever had. She had given this family 2 years of her life, missed her own daughter's school events to cover extra shifts, and never once been late no matter the weather or the exhaustion she carried home each night. And now she was being thrown out over a piece of jewelry that had simply fallen out of sight. What Diane didn't know, and what the Whitmores had completely forgotten, was that they weren't the only ones who called that house home. Richard Vance, the billionaire owner of the property and the true head of the household, had been standing at the top of the staircase the entire time. He had returned from a business trip early that morning, quietly slipping in through the side entrance, planning to surprise his family before heading into another long week of meetings. Instead, he found himself witnessing something that made his blood run cold. Richard had built his fortune from nothing, starting in a small apartment with barely enough money for groceries, working through nights that blurred into mornings until his company became one of the most respected names in the industry. He knew what it meant to be underestimated, to be judged before anyone bothered to ask the full story. He had hired Diane himself after hearing about her situation from a mutual acquaintance, impressed by her work ethic and her devotion to her daughter, and he had trusted his extended family to treat her with the same respect he expected from everyone under his roof. Watching her be humiliated and dismissed without a single question shattered that trust instantly. He descended the staircase in silence, his footsteps steady and deliberate, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning with quiet fury. Mrs. Whitmore turned first, her face draining of color the moment she saw him standing there, arms crossed, having clearly witnessed everything. Mr. Whitmore stammered, trying to explain, but Richard raised a single hand, and the room fell into a silence heavier than anything spoken moments before. He told them plainly that the bracelet had never been stolen, that he himself had found it behind the nightstand 3 days earlier and set it aside to return it, simply forgetting to mention it amid his travel schedule. He told them that Diane had done nothing wrong, that she had shown more integrity in 2 years of service than most people managed in a lifetime, and that her only mistake had been trusting the people she worked for to treat her fairly. Then, in a voice that left no room for argument, he informed the entire household staff overseeing that side of the family's affairs, along with the relatives who had orchestrated her humiliation, that their arrangement in his home was over, effective immediately. Everyone who had turned their back on Diane in that moment would no longer have a place under his roof. The silence that followed was suffocating. Diane stood frozen near the door, her tears now falling for an entirely different reason, overwhelmed by a truth she never expected. Richard walked toward her, his expression softening for the first time, and told her that he was sorry she had ever been made to feel disposable in a house she had helped hold together. He offered her not just her job back, but a new role overseeing household operations, with a salary that would finally reflect the value of everything she had quietly given for 2 years without recognition. Diane could barely find words. She had walked into that morning believing her dignity meant nothing to the people around her, and she was walking out of it with a truth that would change her life. She thought of her daughter, of the nights she had cried from exhaustion but never let anyone see it, and she realized in that moment that her quiet perseverance had been noticed after all, by the one person whose opinion carried the weight to make things right. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to believe that good things still happen to good people. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell us what part of Diane's story moved you the most, because your voice matters just as much as hers did that day. In the weeks that followed, Diane returned to a house that finally felt different, not because of its size or its marble floors, but because for the first time, she was seen. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change everything.